Welcome to Elisha Space, a podcast dedicated to authentic conversations about faith and mental health. I'm your host, and today we're continuing our powerful conversation with Rhonda James Willard.
Thank you, audience, for joining us here at Elisha Space. This is a place where we have authentic conversations on faith and topics of mental health. This is part 2 of our episode with Rhonda James Willard. She is a survivor of sexual abuse. She is a certified master coach, an international speaker, and a best-selling author. She is also founder of the ministry Your Time to Heal, and she has over 20 years experience as a social worker, where she implements all of those combinations to assist and support others within their own individual healing journeys. So I'd like to thank you, Rhonda, for joining us today. It is a pleasure to have you on the show again to talk about this extremely important topic.
Thank you.
My pleasure. So we talked about, you shared your story, your testimony of what happened with the abuse, and now we're going to talk about your healing process. Can you share with the audience what that was like for you?
So it was intense. It wasn't something that just happened. It was a process. And in my book, A Time to Heal, 7 Steps to Healing and Forgiveness After Sexual Abuse and Assault, I developed a framework, the Forgive framework. And that was a process that I had to go through. And the first process, the key process, the first step was facing the truth. And I mentioned yesterday that I had to acknowledge what I had been through. I had to face it. I had to confront it. I had to face the pain that I had been through. I had to face the shame, the guilt that I had been feeling. I had to start talking about, as painful as it was. That was the first step. The next step was to open my heart to healing, to recognize that I was worthy of healing, that I deserved healing. And not only that, that I had to give myself grace, that I am a believer in God. I realize that everybody does not believe in God, and I give respect to each individual's faith. But for me, God had given me grace, but I had to learn to give myself some grace too. And the other thing was to release the weight. Giving a high level overview right now is letting go of my shame, letting go of my guilt. Because I mentioned yesterday that I had forgiven my stepfather, but the person that I had not forgiven was myself. The next step was to grow through grace, recognizing the presence of the pain and my progress. And the next step was to identify the impact and reclaim my identity. There was a greater purpose for me in my life. And I had gone through life not really knowing what my true purpose was. And then embracing the new me, meaning just becoming a new whole person. Maybe I'm not 100% whole, but I'm not where I was a year ago. I'm not where I was 5 years ago. I'm not where I was 40 years ago when this happened to me.
Could you share your perspective of what forgiveness means to you?
Forgiveness means, and I mentioned yesterday, is not only about forgiving an individual. An individual could be a perpetrator. It could mean someone that has done something to you. It could be someone that hurt your feelings. It could be you. It could be a decision that you have made that you have to forgive. But forgiveness is saying that I am going to take control of my life. I am not going to let that person or that thing keep me stuck where I am going to make a decision to move forward in my life so that I can be the best person. If you are a believer in God, then you can fulfill the purpose that He has for you.
What were some of the challenges or obstacles you faced in considering or working towards forgiveness?
For me, it was my silence about my shame and my guilt, because I kept it a secret for 40 some years. So that was a challenge. So being silent was a challenge for me. And the other thing was not recognizing that I needed forgiveness and not recognizing that I deserved grace, not recognizing that I was worthy. Also, not realizing that it was okay. And something that I didn't mention was in my first book that I co-authored, Catalyst Change, I mentioned that my stepfather was a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, meaning he was good and then he was bad. Well, I learned that I was two people also. That I was this strong, intelligent, bold, outgoing, courageous woman. At the same time, I was a very broken, hurt, isolated, standoffish woman. That people really didn't know my pain. They didn't know my hurt. They only saw the best version of me. So that was a challenge for me. And I mentioned yesterday that my son had mentioned when I wrote the first book, he could not believe how vulnerable I was.
Thank you for sharing that. What are some common misconceptions about forgiveness that you've encountered?
One misconception is that when you forgive someone, that you're saying what they did or what they said is okay. It does not mean that. Forgiveness is for you. Forgiveness is so that you can be okay.
And how has forgiveness or the journey towards it impacted your healing process?
For my forgiveness towards my stepfather, I think that it has allowed me to be more resilient. I think it has helped me have strengthened my faith with God. And I think learning to forgive myself has made me healthier. A few weeks ago, I'm in underland now in terms of my weight. I am healthier than I've ever been. The word says diabetic, but my numbers don't say diabetic. I had a therapist. I was released from therapy because she said I had accomplished all of my goals. But it was because I faced my trauma and I went through those steps. But does it mean that everything is perfect? No, it doesn't. And next week, I might have to go to a step and give myself grace again. I might have to open up about something that comes to my mind. I might have to encourage myself again because it's going to be an ongoing pattern. And one of the quotes in the book is healing is not linear. So that means it's not going to be a straight path. And a key foundation in the book too is grace. Not only God's grace, but the grace that we give ourselves, meaning that we are going to have challenges because life is real. Whether it's our trauma that we have been through or it's something else. Now the book, the title says Healing and Forgiveness After Sexual Abuse and Assault. But the principle, the framework can be applied to forgiveness for any topic.
How do you view the relationship between forgiveness and justice? Can they coexist?
Yes, justice, yes, they can coexist. Because it does not mean that a person should not be held accountable for their actions. Because when we become adults, we become accountable for our choices. So, yes, they can coexist. I think there are circumstances, and I think it depends on a family or an individual. I know there are circumstances where some individuals make decisions to, when they forgive, not to charge. But I think that's an individual decision depending on a person's forgiveness level. Because again, we have to realize, yes, forgiveness, but forgiveness is not automatic. Forgiveness also is a process. And my road to forgiveness may be different from your road to forgiveness.
Add this from the prospect of a counselor who owns a mental health practice too. The way I view forgiveness, and audience, if you've been following this podcast for a while, is I've come to the point where forgiveness is choosing to no longer allow yourself to be shifted nor offended by what that other person did to you or what you view or perceive that you have done to yourself. And so if you see yourself that way, then, or if you get shifted by it, then there's still work to do with forgiveness. And forgiveness can be a journey, but it can also not be a journey. And the length of forgiveness has to do with the offense of what happened to you, how your boundary was crossed. That can lengthen or shorten the time of you being able to forgive that person, as well as your relationship, the rapport that you have, how that connection was there. So if, for example, it is like in Rhonda's situation, it has to do with a parent's role, someone that you can feel safe with, secure with, loved. It's primary foundational things that you need as a child. Even if you think about it, we eat as babies. Our parents feed us. We eat from them. Okay, whether we become breastfed or spoon fed. Either way, we are getting our nourishment from our parents foundationally, right? And so if that is shaken or moved, then it can most definitely be a process. Her stepfather was a parent in the home. He was someone who was considered to be a person who was safe. He was someone who was considered to be a father figure to her. And because he was not fathering her appropriately, that boundary was crossed and it took a while to forgive. And part of what Rhonda, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but part of what she needed to do in order to move into a place of greater forgiveness for herself was to recognize the lie that she believed and no longer the lie to have power over how she moved as an adult. So, am I off about anything I said, Rhonda?
That's correct. That is correct.
Rhonda, thank you so much for all of that. Now, let me ask you this question. Throughout your journey, how has your support systems reacted to your views on forgiveness?
Well, people that did not know what happened to me it has been interesting because I'm at the forgiveness point and they're not at the forgiveness point. So it has been challenging because they're at the place where this should have been done. How can you forgive? So I'm having to redirect them to the Bible. I'm having to tell them how it's benefiting me to have forgiveness. I'm having to tell them, yes, this happened to me because of everything that has happened. It has made me the person that I am today.
Right.
I would not be the Rhonda that you know me as because that is a part of me. The people because a lot of people didn't know. My paternal family that knew, they are relieved because I am talking about it. The ones that are alive, they are very relieved that I'm starting to share what happened because they really did not know what happened. They just knew a high level. They just knew it happened to me. And they could not understand. They could not understand my relationship with my paternal family. They could not understand ties that I had with them. They felt that I was catering to that side of the family. They felt like I was trying to earn my mother's love, different things. So it has been challenging on both sides.
What advice would you give to other survivors who are grappling with this idea of forgiveness?
I would tell them to start the first step, to start that first step, to face your truth, to start it and start chipping away. As you start the process, it may be painful in the beginning, but as you I was thinking about it this morning when I was getting ready to drive to my doctor's appointment, which is 2 hours away from my home. And every time I talk about it, I feel lighter. And so I would encourage people to begin to first face your truth so that you can get to the point where you can start talking about it and sharing what happened to you. And the other thing about sharing what happened to you is, and what I have learned, and I had mentioned yesterday that I couldn't understand why it was happening to me. But now I know my purpose. My purpose is to help others that have been through similar situations that I have been through, to be able to voice what happened to me and to encourage others to start talking about what has happened to them. Because when we do that, that could be that one person that has been in pain and needs that release. And we might be the one to help that person work towards their healing.
In your opinion, does forgiveness necessarily imply a reconciliation with the perpetrator, or can it exist independently?
It can or it cannot. It depends on the situation. You can make a choice to forgive someone, but for that perpetrator not to be a part of your life again. That's your choice. It depends. Someone else may choose, I will forgive you. You may have certain access to my life. It depends on a person's level of forgiveness and what boundaries they choose to have in their life. Because again, we know that most of the time, perpetrators are people that we know. Sometimes individuals might not have the luxury of completely removing individuals from their lives, whether they're not incarcerated or because of family dynamics.
Right. I actually was thinking about a client that I had where there was an assault that happened among siblings, and everyone is an adult now, and they don't attend the holidays with the rest of the family if they know that person is going to be there. So that's how this person is handling it. It's because she just does not want that access.
Yeah,
I think that's part of the healing journey as well. I think that's okay.
it is
You know?
okay. Yes,
Mhm.
it is okay, because you have a person has to set the boundaries that is going to be work for them, that's going to make them healthy, not everybody else around them. It's not
Right.
about pleasing our family, it's not about pleasing our friends. And the other part of it is, and something that piqued someone my sister-in-law kept telling me, was about another situation. She would say to me, you have to love yourself first. And I used to
Right.
think to myself, I love Rhonda. And I did, but I really didn't understand what that really, really meant. And that is a whole different type of love, a type of love that you have to put yourself first
Right.
above others. Because if you don't put yourself first, then you're not going to be healthy. You're not going to be healthy for yourself. You're not going to be healthy for your children, your grandchildren, or whatever other dynamics that you have going on in your life. And so that was a shift that I had to make, because I'm a social worker.
Right.
In my family, I have been the support system, suffering in silence. But I learned that I had to put God first for those that believe in God. I had to put him first. And then I had to put Rhonda second.
I think about that scripture where it says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind. And then the second commandment is this: love your neighbor as you love yourself. And traditionally in the church, it's been taught God first, other people second, you third. But that's actually not true.
It's not.
It, it's God first, you second, and then other people third. That's what it is, your neighbor third. Because the more you show love towards yourself, the easier it is to show love from a pure lens to others as well. How do you think societal attitudes towards forgiveness have impacted survivors of sexual abuse?
I don't think it is an ideal, because I think we focus on the justice part. I think we focus on the retribution part. And we don't think about the impacts that a individual really have a clear understanding of the impacts that a survivor goes through. We just think of that one component. We're not thinking about it is affecting their mental health. It is affecting their physical health. It is affecting their marriages, their relationships, their careers. So if it's just dealing with one component and those other components aren't addressed, it's not going to benefit the individual.
I even think about how on the first show you talked about how you couldn't even stand for somebody to hug you.
Yes.
It also impacted your ability to receive love.
Yes.
Are there any resources, books, or practices that have been particularly helpful to you on your forgiveness journey?
So for me, therapy has been very key for me. I am a strong component, a very strong advocate of therapists. And I tell people, I love God, but I've only heard God's voice twice in my life. Actually heard his voice. And with a therapist, I am able to communicate my feelings. I am able to say things that I'm not judged with. So I would say therapy is key. Also, journaling. Now, some of the things that I do every morning is I pray, read my Bible. I have positive affirmations that I read. And that's kind of like a routine for me in the morning. Something else that I do is I read 2 books. I read a chapter out of 2 books. So one of them may be a Christian book of my choice, and then one is a personal development book. Some of the other things that also are beneficial is that I love to do is exercise. So those things are important also because they motivate the endorphins in our body. They make us feel better. And I recommend for individuals that aren't used to exercising, there's also chair exercises that you can do. There are exercises that you can do with your hands and things of that nature. If you don't pray, you can also do meditation.
If you were to wrap up what you really want the audience to know on this topic about your healing journey, what would it be? What do you want them to know? What are some takeaways you really want them to have?
So the main one is that you are not alone and that there is hope for you and on this healing journey, and that you can fulfill your purpose in life. You can have a fulfilling life. Doesn't mean you're going to have the perfect life, but you can have a fulfilling life. You can have a life of joy. You can have a life of peace. And one of in my book that I like to share that's at the end of the book is that I think that kind of sums it up is I am the story. Am not what broke me. Am what rose from it. I am not the silence. I am the voice that shattered it. I am the wisdom. I am not the plan. I am the purpose. I am what I choose to do now. To heal, to rise, to love, to live am the story. And I am still being written.
That is beautiful. You can find her book on her website, and it is available to purchase for pre-sales now. I'll make sure to have that on the show notes. Audience, this is an extremely sensitive topic. And if you're feeling like you need to talk to someone, do so. If you need to find a group. I'll also have some resources available, or if you'd like, you can reach out to me and I'd be happy to provide some resources and things of that nature as well. Rhonda's website and all of her information will be available to you as well. Her books that she has co-written and also written will be available to you in the show notes as well. And I want to thank you, Rhonda, for joining us today at Elisha Space and sharing this topic that I personally don't think we talk about enough. But here at Elisha Space, we're going to talk about these things because we need to get the word out and the awareness of it all out more and not less. So thank you, audience, and we'll see you on the next show. Take care and be well.